I'm going to introduce our panelists in alphabetical order. No, I'm not. I'm going to introduce them in the way they're sitting. On my immediate left, we have Mark Brown, columnist, Chicago Sun-Times. Writes, how many days a week you write your column?
4.
4 days a week? Boy, that'd be a heavy teaching load, let me tell you. There you go. And you all read them, and that's it, takes care of him. Next, we have Carol Marin, who has, well, she wears many hats. Channel 11, Channel 5, Sun-Times. That's enough about her. Married a public administration professor. That's the most important. And we have all the way up from the hinterlands, Dave McKinney, Springfield reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times. For those of you who do watch Channel 11, there actually is a body to the rest of the head, because he's always on Skype, and that takes care of him. And then we have the newest member of the Sun-Times, Natasha Kuraki, who why Natasha? Well, that's just because, she's starting out again. But I spent a lot of fun-filled days when I couldn't sneak into the main courtroom during Blago 1 and Blago 2. It was a golden era, that's all we can say. And Natasha is now the political reporter for the Sun-Times, replacing our pal Abden, who's now gone over to the dark side. So, what I thought I'd do is that this is about the coming election. I thought and yes, I have survived the Walsh-Duckworth debate. That's just something that it'll be part of my tombstone if I ever have a tombstone. But this will be a lot more civil. Hope none of you drank ahead of time, because that one was an open bar for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. Tremendous. Anyway, just like in the regular debates, take 4 or 5 minutes, Candy Crowley time, to give your overview of the election. And how do you think the national election will go? Because then I have some serious, deep, penetrating, almost John Calloway-like questions dealing with the legislative and congressional races. But we should start off with the presidency, right? 4 or 5 minutes. Mark, you're up first.
Oh, good. If you go first, then you don't have to worry about repeating what the other one said. Okay, I know, we're the experts, so we're supposed to know what's going to happen in the election. And the truth is, I really don't know what's going to happen. But I read the polls just like you, even though I don't believe in the polls as much as everybody else does. Clearly, in my mind, it's trending poorly for the president. I'm not feeling a Democratic year coming on here. If he doesn't do something tonight to sort of get things moving back in his direction, as those of you who do read the Sun-Times know, I'm a liberal. I'm hoping for the president to win, but I'm getting pessimistic about this. I see that the New York Times poll expert over the weekend still has it as a 68% chance of Obama winning. This is the guy who is the numbers cruncher who can read all the polls and knows what the shortcomings and all of them are. I guess that guy knows more than me. I'm not feeling it again. It's forever going to be a mystery to me why the president failed to engage in that first debate. He didn't need to be brilliant. He just had to respect the voters, acknowledge that Romney was a legitimate opponent, and get out there and make his case. I saw this bit that they did over the weekend in New York where it was a roast, and they both got up there, and Obama said that he thought he did a lot better in the second debate. I felt really well rested after taking a long nap in the first debate. I totally agree with him. I've got a theory. I came up with it this morning trying to think about this. During these debates, it's as if he's not listening. He's not listening to the questions, and he's not listening to Romney's answers, and so he's not reacting properly. And in the process, I think that's symbolic of something that the voters are feeling about Washington in general and him, that maybe he's not listening and that he's not hearing them. My favorite theory of what's going to happen here is this electoral college model that gives us the 269 tie. I believe that one has Romney winning Florida and Ohio and Obama the rest of the swing states, right?
No.
Oh, well, you can correct me later.
No, I won't. I'm not Candy Crowley. Candy is dandy, but green is quicker, but I'm not going to do that. No. No Ogden Nash fans in the audience, are there?
The country will devolve into something not quite chaos, but a lot worse than we had with the Florida recount, and people will buy lots of newspapers or read us online. I did want to mention here, somebody pointed out that I have given my college-age son at Virginia Tech to vote. I've given him my blessing to vote in Virginia this year. We need the swing votes. Actually, you know, apparently this 269 tie, there's less than a 1% chance of that happening, but they do think there's still a good 10% chance of another recount. So I wanted to suggest in here today that Ron might want to patch things up with Bert Odelson and get him on board. Bert's usually available on these things. I'm going to save my comments on the congressional races till later, so I have something.
Very good. Round of applause.
Thank you, Paul. So this weekend, I look at my email, and one of my colleagues writes me a note going, "Oh my God, I know this race is going to be close." I email back, "How?" She was at a reunion in Indiana with her aunts and her cousins. They come from all over the country, but they're mostly from the Midwest. Indiana, as we know, was an amazing, very close swing the last time. Many of her aunts, these are Irish Catholic women, voted for Obama. Even the Republicans did. Last time, they took a straw poll, little slips of paper. They didn't sign it. They, I think, only put O or R so no one could identify the handwriting, and they counted it out, and it was dead even. You know, I actually, though it's not scientific and I go cross-eyed looking at these polls, I really think that's just about as good an index as any other that we are seeing. And I know Paul wants to talk about national, but let me just take this down to sort of suburban level. I'm a blue-collar kid who spent a lot of time growing up in Rolling Meadows, where right now the debate that Paul moderated between Walsh and Duckworth was a real firestorm. And I'm called the Real Clear Politics analyst, a guy named Sean Trendy, who is very wise to the numbers. And I said, and this is right before Walsh surged in a poll, the We Ask America poll, and I said, "Do you honestly think that Walsh can pull out of this?" And he said, "I think he's got a chance, and I think he's trending that way," which it turned out, of course, he was. And then you begin to say, why? I said, but wait, look at those districts. It's blue collar. I mean, as a kid in Rolling Meadows, it was hoping to ascend from a basement apartment in Chicago to a middle class home. But these are aging out suburbs, heavily now Hispanic. Elgin, Rolling Meadows, variety in between. Only Barrington is definitely going to go for Romney, you might think. And he said, here are the myths. The myths are that women go for women in on abortion. Women go for jobs first. The myth is that Hispanics are concerned about Obama on immigration and will go that way. Hispanics care about jobs right now. And so this election is made more difficult because it is the economy more than anything else, which is why I think this debate tonight is going to be problematic. Because outside of what happened in Libya, people are truly driven by what does it mean domestically for me? What's it going to look like economically for me? Is my kid going to get a job, or is he going to continue to live with me while he finishes his master's degree or his PhD because he can't afford to go to work because there is no work there? I think all of those things swirl to make this really close. I called David Yepsen, who many of you know, the legendary reporter of Iowa who now runs the Paul Simon Institute in Carbondale, and I said, Dave, what do you think? And he said, we're too close. It's too close. And if Romney picks up another 1.5 points, it's not going to be reachable to pull back. And so for all of those reasons and one more, I think that this really could go either way. And I agree with Bill Daley, who months ago said to the Obama people, line up your lawyers now. All those hanging Chad guys from 4 years ago, scoop them up, sign them up, because this may be where we are headed. If you look in 2004, in most of the collar counties where George Bush, DuPage, Kane, Kankakee, Lake, McHenry, Will, Bush, 55, 55, 55, 51. 4 years later, it's Obama, 55, 56, 52, 60, 53. Then remember 2010. Bill Brady took all those numbers back in those counties back to the Republican side. So do we think that those Republicans are coming to Obama in this election? I don't think so. Illinois will still go for him, of course. But I think these are really profound problems. And I'll leave you with one last thought, because we need a verity here and all this uncertainty. Verities are, Derek Smith's probably going to win, okay? Verity, Jesse Jackson's probably going to win, because this is also Illinois, and I leave you with that thought.
All right, round of applause. Mr. McKinney, give us the central Illinois version, or you can talk wherever the hell you want. I mean, go right ahead.
Well, you know, the state house races have kind of paled in attention here. We haven't had much focus on them. And Carol mentioned Derek Smith. I mean, that by far the most interesting storyline on election night is going to be, from my perspective, what happens to Mr. Smith. There are a number of races out there now that are
Now,
big money races.
by the way, you may do that, all right. We invited you from Springfield. You already broke the moderator's rule. Go right ahead. You're the expert. Go ahead.
Well, at any rate, the 177 House seats and Senate seats are up for re-election because the Republicans had the misfortune of the Democrats drawing the maps this year. And if trends are drawing away from Obama, Illinois, I think the Democrats seem to be in the driver's seat in these state races. And, you know, I had a Republican strategist tell me the other day, like in the House, you know, these seats, Cross is going to struggle to keep, you know, the gains he had the last 2 years. And it's just going to be a big potential blowout for the Democrats. That's what they're fearful of. I think, you know, we see several races out in the collar counties here that are attracting a lot of attention, where we have some incumbents. Skip Saviano, for example, out in the near west suburbs. He's in the race of his life. He's been a guy who's been around forever, very safe district, but now he's got a hostile district, and he's got a Speaker of the House that's very ticked off at him right now. And that's one race that I'll be watching as well. You know, I think it's also interesting in these lower level ballot races that, you know, our governor has been absent. You know, a lot of times we'll see commercials, we'll see, you know, candidates on the stump clamoring to get the governor to come out with him or her, and we're not seeing that this time, which again is a reflection that the governor himself has problems, you know, that these House and Senate members don't want to be associated with. So, I don't know, the election night for me is watching the State House, and I think the Democrats are expecting big gains, and Derek Smith is the best one of the bunch, I think, if that comes to pass. So,
Natasha.
I just want to, you know, you guys covered a lot of different aspects very well, but I just think that we shouldn't underestimate tonight's debate. If you look at when Romney started surging again in the polls, it was after the first debate, when Obama didn't show up, when he failed to seize on the 47% video. That's when Romney was really starting to take a turn. And what's really interesting about this election, what a lot of different experts are saying, is that the number of undecided voters this close to the election, we're only a couple weeks away, and there's a lot of people who still don't know what to do. And I think that it's largely, you've got ideological views clashing with the whole economic scheme. But if you look at tonight's debate, it's going to be focused on foreign policy. That's going to play, Obama feels that's going to play to his strengths. You know, we're going to hear a lot about Osama bin Laden and a lot of his achievements and his, you know, making good on promises. Of course, there's pitfalls there too with Benghazi. We're going to look at Romney to try to pull it back to jobs and economy and domestic issues as much as possible. But don't be surprised if, you know, if Obama really comes out well tonight. I think things can turn around for him, especially in some of these states, the battleground states where he's been losing some ground.
Thank you, Natasha. Give her a round of applause. The latest poll, hot off the press, is that if you take all the moderators pulling a Candy Crowley, if you put all the electoral votes that were Obama is ahead in those states, including Ohio, including Michigan, he's at 265. If you put all the electoral votes where Romney's ahead, that is the southern three that Obama carried in 08, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida, he's at 248. The 4 states that they now claim are totally toss-ups are Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, and New Hampshire. To Mark's point, the only reason I bring all this up, besides showing you that I can do research still after many decades, is that if Romney wins Colorado, Iowa, and Nevada, but Obama wins New Hampshire, guess what? 269 apiece. And that will make 2000 look like those chads will be nothing compared to, because you know, all you political science majors, who decides the election. It's the House of Representatives, each state getting 1 vote. So whoever controls the congressional delegation usually would cast that vote for the party that's controlling it. Emphasis on the word usually, which makes those congressional races even more important. I'm not hoping for 269 myself.
You don't want to sell newspapers?
Only dreaming about it. It would be spectacular. And it would probably mean the death of the Electoral College. So now that added addendum from the guy who shouldn't be talking, Ms. Marin, you now can go and zero in. Well, you're already zeroed in, but now you could zero in further. Leave Mr. Smith out of this for, maybe that could be a title of a column. Mr. Smith goes to Springfield, or goes back to Springfield. But you could talk about those congressional races that are so exciting in the northern suburbs, but also you could talk about what's happening in Springfield with some of those downstate congressional districts. Illinois has 18 congressional districts and 1/3 are in play. There's no state that has anywhere near that percentage. So Carol, you start it off.
All right, I'll just give you my guesstimates, and many of these I think are too close to call. I think Dold and Schneider right now are locked into a real fight right now. I think it's advantaged Dold a little bit, but maybe not for long. Biggert Foster is interesting. I've looked at some of the rankings on that. She seems to lead by a point or two. The thing that would make you crazy in that district, and it's making me crazy who doesn't live in that district, are the cookie cutter, ridiculously dumbed down ads produced by both political parties. The Democrats and the Republican national committees, they are horrifying ads. Mark's written about some of them, but you almost can't distinguish any longer. Is it for Foster or is it for Biggert? He's a millionaire. No, she's a millionaire. I think they could suppress the vote just by the fact that you don't want to go out and vote for anybody. Jason Plummer and Bill Enyard in 12. I hear from Pat Brady, our Republican
Who's in
chairman
the
over
audience
there.
tonight taking notes? Yes. There
he
he is.
thinks that,
Nice round of applause from this crowd, believe me.
That he thinks that Plummer is okay. Plummer, you recall, was the lieutenant governor candidate who did not release his tax returns then or now, but it's a conservative district and he may do well and he's got plenty of money. Rodney Davis, David Gill. I think that Davis is holding his own. Is that right, Pat? Or the Republicans think so anyway?
Yeah, he's up 5 or 6.
These Bobby Schilling and Sherry Bustos, very interesting race because she was way, way down and now seems to be climbing up in Real Clear Politics, has that as a leaning district, and in fact she's waged a real campaign. Her dad used to work for Alan Dixon, Gene Callahan, and she's been schooled in politics. She used to babysit for Dick Durbin's kids. Bobby Schilling is giving, is in a real tough race, but he had more advantages than he currently has now. So that's the short report in my view, Paul.
Good. Dave? Could you continue what you started?
I could, exactly,
Yeah.
and do the detail here. Again, back in the Saviano race, that one is of great interest. I mean, there are so many dynamics that are in play with that race.
Would you explain to some of the amateurs here, and there aren't many, who Saviano is and real quickly, what is his background in Springfield as a Republican?
Well, I mean, he's been a state rep down there since the early 90s. His clout for most of the time was the Rosemont mayor, Don Stevens. And of course, when Stevens died, Saviano's base of, his kind of political clout disappeared a little bit. He's still very influential with Tom Cross. He's a big fundraiser, but he's run afoul with the House Speaker in this race. Everybody I talk to, they describe it as a very personal race. The history of this goes back to the Emerald Casino, where Mayor Stevens, of course, was pushing very hard for the Emerald. Skip Salviano in Springfield was carrying water on that front, and when Lisa Madigan stepped up and basically torpedoed that, Salviano was very critical. Yeah, called it mobbed up, exactly. It was, Salviano it became a personal thing to him.
Hold it. Yeah, turn off. Okay. Unless it's the governor looking for a reprieve. Go ahead.
So anyway, the Speaker has marshaled all of the resources in the world in this race, and Salviano, as I mentioned, is a very good fundraiser. And so we have just this clash that's going on out there that, a lot of the mayors in this district even are longtime supporters of Representative Salviano, and Gary Mack out there can speak to that. He knows that world very well. But those folks have been getting pressure from all sides, from the Salviano people and from the Madigan people. And that's going to be, aside from the Smith one, that's going to be a great race to watch because, Madigan and Salviano used to be friends. Salviano used to be, as a Republican, a chairman in a committee down there that Madigan put him in charge of. So they've parted ways. So there's that race. Out in the northwest suburbs, the 52nd House race is a very interesting one to me, too, where that was a seat that had been held for a long time by Mark Bobian. He was a very moderate Republican and highly regarded in Springfield. He was a budget expert. He passed away, and that created a vacuum there. And it wasn't for a while. The House Republicans rallied behind their candidate, David McSweeney, who is on the ballot now. And it took a while for Representative Bobian's widow, Dee Bobian, to decide that she wanted to jump in and take over. And she's had, she's basically now running as an independent, but she has all the backing of Madigan as well. And that race is really the only legislative race right now. If you turn on your television sets, the only legislative race that you will see on network the main network channels in the Chicago area, and that speaks to how much money is in that race. Overall, we have, I think, 10 races where right now there has been $1 million raised in each of them, which gives you an idea that, there's a lot of money that is being devoted to these low ballot races that nobody really is paying attention to. In the McSweeney-Bobian race, McSweeney is trying to, dredge up all of the anti-Madigan stuff that he can. I mean, that, of course, has been a focal point for the Republicans. They want to turn the Speaker into a boogeyman and sell T-shirts for the dogs, fire Mike Madigan. But that's been where they're coming from. Todd Akin, he's been an issue that has surfaced, the Missouri congressman, and the legitimate rape comment. He's surfaced in that race because Bobian's side, she's backed by Personal PAC. They've zeroed in on McSweeney's abortion record and tried to tie him to Todd Akin with that. So, I mean, that's an interesting race. There's another race out in the northwest suburbs in Buffalo Grove where the Democratic map makers drew together two incumbents, Carol Sente, a Democrat from Vernon Hills, and Sid Mathias, a longtime, well-regarded House member, Republican from Buffalo Grove. Those folks have been spending a ton of money as well, a lot of TV advertising. That's really one of the best race in the collar counties that pits incumbent against incumbent. So I'm going to be watching that one as well. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at on those.
Okay, before we go all right, if it was good or not, yeah, I know we came 200 miles. You got to give the guy a little. Very good. By the way, those races for the House and the Senate, you should know, because this is a democracy, and Illinois prides itself on a democracy. Half of in each, almost half the houses and half the Senate races have already been decided because of no opponent. So a lot of this is, early voting has already taken place. So we don't have to worry about that. And the House races, I will go to Natasha and spare you my rant on why the cutback amendment was such a total abomination. Natasha, go right ahead.
Well, unlike those state races, the congressional races are, as you've probably seen, the ads flooded on the airwaves. You cannot get away from the negative ads that have been going on. All of these congressional races in the Chicago area and in the state are extremely close, not all of them. There's 6 particularly close races, the ones that Carol went over earlier downstate, and then of course we have the 3 here. I'm sure all of you have heard much about the Tammy Duckworth, Joe Walsh race, and that's one of the main ones. What's been very interesting, I think, with what's going on with the congressional races and why they are so close, you've got 2 major things happening in this election. I mean, one is the remap. There is a redistricting, is a Democratic remap. And if you look at incumbents like Judy Biggert, she says that they actually drew the map around her house. So she's no longer in her district. And
Happens.
And the same thing, Joe Walsh says the same things. He was drawn out of his district. They looked at where Duckworth had strongholds in the past, and they drew all those precincts into hers. So you would think, okay, the Democrats should really have these elections, right? Well, then you've got another force, which is the super PACs. And we've really, really been seeing the full force of the super PACs in this election. And it's particularly in the 8th District with Walsh and Duckworth and Biggert and Dold. They've just been flooding, pumping millions and millions of dollars into these races. And that's what's ended up helping, Joe Walsh get his word out. It's not his money, it's a super PAC money. But what's been so interesting about it, and what the Duckworth campaign has been complaining about a lot, is the fact that you can have 1 or 2 millionaires who dump $1 million or $2 million into negative ads and
Pardon the interruption. Go right ahead.
No problem. So anyway, those are the big factors going on. And then in the Dold-Schneider race in the 10th district, Bloomberg just announced last week that he was going to pump millions of dollars into that race as well. So we've just been seeing a lot of money that's not only leveled the playing field, but has made these races, these 3 in the Chicago area, they're all in a dead heat. There was a recent poll saying that in the 8th district that Duckworth was pulling ahead. However, as sometimes reported last week, there's the super PAC that's really supporting Walsh that could end up dumping another $2.5 million. And I mean, there's only a couple weeks left, so that's a significant buy here in the end. So,
Mark, your comments.
Well, first of all, what's with that hillbilly ringtone?
That's
You going to play that for us again?
That's only a special tone for my daughter. So go carry on, please.
All right. Of the...
I'll let that ethnic slur slide, but go ahead.
I'm a hillbilly.
What? They talked about it, though. Boy, this crowd's getting to be like Duckworth Walsh. Did you guys booze it up before the... Carol, could someone repeat what...
There is David Gill. We talked about Rodney Davis and David Gill.
Yes.
Yes,
but give her a chance.
Close, but right now it looks like Davis may be holding his own in that. You may not like him, and he may not win. I'm not saying he will, but in a lot of these things, I think it really is a jump ball. And that's the problem. We were looking for some certainty or some leader. You mentioned Bloomberg. Bloomberg doesn't want to endorse Obama or Romney. There's really this problem out there of people trying to figure it out. I think they're holding back. I don't care what they say about early voting. I don't think it shows enthusiasm. I think it shows discipline on the part of people who always vote. But in the Gill Davis race, I think it could go either way.
Well, I do want to chime in.
Let Mark have his chance, Betty. You could come up here later and chat. Go ahead.
The Democrats drew this map thinking that they were going to pick up 5 seats. And I think they got a little too cute. Right now, I think they'd be lucky to pick up 1, maybe 2. If they can, protect Duckworth there, hold off Walsh, I think they should be delighted. I tried to talk to Durbin last week. He thinks maybe they still have a chance in a couple of those others with the with Illinois being out of play on the presidential side and that holding down Democratic turnout, I think all of these Democratic congressional candidates are going to be in trouble. Maybe Foster. Maybe he can get through there too.
By the way, that's one of the spin-offs from the Romney first debate. He gave the Republicans enthusiasm, which may carry over to some of these congressional races. But I will hold the rest of my firepower because I am the moderator, despite that phone call. Where are you, City Club B? Where is she? Tell her this is her time to shine. There's no chance being in the wings. If you have a question, all right, don't leave. Work the room. All right, here we go. I haven't a chance to proof these, so I start off with those who write the neatest. Graham Grady, where are you, Graham? Over here. See ya. Gotcha. Shefsky and Froelich. How much of a factor will international absentee ballots, including soldiers stationed overseas, impact a presidential election? And you thought this would be a walk in the park. Huh? Well, think about that one. No. Does anyone want to?
I mean, if it gets down to 3 votes, if we've got hanging chads, we're going to count every one of those things. I think in this election everything counts. By how much, I don't know, but I would hold them dear.
I don't think it would be an issue unless we had a recount. I don't.
Okay, Bob Manwitz. Where are you, Bob? Famous WGN former employee.
By the kitchen, Paul.
There, the tower's in trouble. That's where you go, babe. Why don't you start off, Dave? This is from Bob. Will we ever see a viable, in brackets, a viable challenge to Mike Madigan? Now, just because your job depends on access, don't let that interfere.
That's true. That's true.
Watch your words, young man.
We have no access there anymore.
Yeah, I haven't had access in a while, that's right. You know what, I mean, the most telling thing about Mike Madigan and how much longer he might be around is, if you watch the man eat lunch, and you all know the story about that single plate with the apple, he is, for his age, he is fit as can be, and I could see him doing this job for another dozen years. And on top of it, as Paul pointed out, there's not, there definitely are people in waiting there. These folks who stick around and stick around and stick around and think that might be the year that Madigan decides to step down. But, he shows no sign of wanting to do that. He, somebody asked him in Tampa, intimated, how much longer are you going to stick around? And he just sort of shrugged.
You mean Charlotte?
Or Charlotte, I'm sorry. And he just sort of shrugged and seemed indifferent to the question. He's very happy where he's at. He still seems challenged. He's still, and as I said, there's nobody there to give him a strong challenge. And so absent that, the only way I could see him possibly bowing out would be if the Republicans, say in 2 years, in the gubernatorial race, or if there is some miraculous shift in the way things are going this year. If the Republicans can retake the House, I think that might usher him out. But short of those things, I don't know. I think he's there for the long term. He is healthy as can be, and his mind is very sharp. He's as shrewd as ever. So I don't see him departing very soon.
A lot of cowards up here, but that's okay.
No, I'll jump in.
Go, jump in.
I
won't.
know the Republicans say that they expect to make gains in the House this year and then have a shot at him. I mean, that the goal is to take him out in 2 years. It depends on seeing how well he's drawn this map. Well, I guess we'll find out. I also think you got to factor in. I mean, there is the Lisa issue, and I think he would like to stay in power as long as he can help her. But at the point where he starts to get in her way, which could be the next time she decides to move up, maybe he'll make a move then.
In Charlotte, though, he was asked that question about how does Lisa alter into your, affect your plans and sticking around. He doesn't see an issue there either.
Absolutely, that's what he says all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. No issue.
Yep.
Okay, this is from our pal Tom Donovan. The Libya issue, 4 dead Americans, including a U.S. ambassador. Do the panelists think Libya is a big nothing or a simmering, that's a great word, Benghazi Gate. How big is Libya?
It's a wag the dog story. The problem is that you need two politicians who can talk about it. You need Bill Clinton to come in and explain it. The fact is that so Candy Crowley, despite what some people here think, answered the question because a commentator isn't a potted plant, and Obama did say terror. The other part of that is that she went on to say, and that got much less play, there was than 2 weeks of trying to describe it as some sort of spontaneous terror-filled moment that was generated by an anti-Islamic video. I think it's a fair question. I think, you tell us the truth and how it unfolded. But Benghazi, I don't believe, is a foreign policy story. It is a candor story. It's a transparency story. But there were spontaneous demonstrations in Libya in support of the United States in those streets right after that as well. So, Libya, whatever we think of it, you could argue is in the plus column for Obama in terms of bringing it to more democracy than you previously had. I think it all is going to be in the narrative, and you rely on these two men to explain the narrative and how it weaves in. The same way, tonight, they're going to have to try to take foreign policy and weave it back into domestic policy, because it's the only way people are going to listen to it. How's China going to affect, the outsourcing of my work? How's what's going on with the euro going to affect the United States? How's it going to affect the stock market? All those things have got to be rolled together. So it depends, I think it depends on how they speak to Benghazi, how people view it.
Anyone want to jump in?
I can just add that, I think Romney's going to bring that up again a lot tonight. I thought it was really brewing, and it could have really exploded, and it still can. But I thought in the last debate, Obama did seem to diffuse that, and that was partially because of Candy Crowley's remarks at the time. But you're right, Carol. She did try to be fair and say, yes, it took them a while, but he did call it an act of terror at the time. But again, I think a lot of it's going to depend on how he handles it tonight, and how the flow of information is coming out of the White House.
The larger thing I think is Al-Qaeda is saying, he called it terror, but then attributed it to this other thing. Didn't call it a Qaeda-like terrorism. I think that's where we may see Romney try to enlarge and discuss this in terms of, yes, Osama bin Laden is dead, but is there still a major threat to the United States with regard to this network, however disabled it has been in its parts?
I think that the question at the second debate, and this goes back to what I was saying about whether or not he was listening to the questions at the debate and whether he was engaging the question. I believe the question was something to do with who was responsible and what had been done to take precautions once we knew that there was a danger there in the consulate. And then he had obviously a very well-rehearsed canned speech about what Romney's saying being Romney's approach having been offensive. And it came across very heartfelt and all, but clearly it was what he practiced. But then they never even tried, I felt, to deal with the question that the person was asking. And so, I think Romney's going to go there because it fires up the base. I hope that Obama gets him back over in China and somehow shows that Romney to me seems a little dangerous on China. I find it a little scary the way he wants to pick a fight there.
All right. Okay, well, not that I disagree with the two people on the panel here, but what Candy Crowley did was the equivalent of a boxing referee throwing a punch. Just dare to be the referee, not to be the participant. Disagree with me if you like. I just thought that was, you'd be the first. Okay. Thomas McElroy, level 1 colossal. So, what's the name of your company? That's global, huh? Okay. There seem not to be any. We got to start writing in pen, guys. On many issues for the. What's your question in 20 words?
not to be any sort of conflict.
Okay, we got it. Sort of those nonpartisan questions that the City Club is famous for. Who wants to handle that one? Dave, you haven't, you passed on Libya. Now, come on, step up.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think what we've seen this election, we've seen a proliferation of the fact checkers. I mean, you know, the day that, you know, almost real time, we're seeing, you know, these debates, and then, you know, and then on all the programs, you're seeing fact checking going on. I mean, all I can tell you is that from my standpoint as a reporter, if I catch any politician in a lie, I will expose it. I mean, it's just what we do. And I don't think that there's any kind of grand scheme on anybody's part, at least at this table, to try to, you know, carry water for anybody one way or the other. I mean, I just think that you know, it's also, you know, if there's a lie going on, it's also up to the other candidate to lead that as well. And I think that speaks to President Obama and certainly that timid approach he had in the first debate. You know, I think he came alive in that second debate, as we all know, a little bit. But it's up to him to make that a focal point of his narrative against Mitt Romney if he thinks it's important. And you know, I think you see that happen, and then there's going to be a lot of press stories about that.
Very good, because this debate, he doesn't have Candy Crowley in his corner. He's got to do it on his own. Pretty tough. Okay, Peter Scozzi. Jump on this one. Natasha, I may throw this at you, given your former assignment. How many candidates are under investigation, active investigation? Derek Smith, Congressman Jackson. Top of your head, are those just the
I'm sorry,
two?
how many are under current investigation?
This is the only state where you have to ponder that.
Publicly or no, those are the ones that are not only under investigation. I mean, Derek Smith has been indicted. He's been, you know, caught on wiretap, allegedly taking a bribe and allegedly counting the money on the wiretap.
Mere innuendos, as the late mayor used to say.
And they, you know, both Jackson and Smith are expected to win this election. And, you know, the only thing I can say is that, you know, they talk about, oh, the media doesn't do this or that. I mean, we've told everyone, you know, everyone knows about Jackson, everyone knows about Derek Smith, so it's now up to the voters to decide if that's what they want.
But I think it's safe to say there are more politicians under investigation. I mean, I'm not even making it up, but I mean, there is the legislative scholarship investigation that is still going on, federal investigation that would affect a number of state lawmakers if the feds scooped them up. There are investigations in and around the western suburbs with regard to certain lawmakers and relationships to local governments. And so, but I mean, these things take, the federal clock ticks on its own time, and so I think it's safe to say there are some nervous politicians who have not yet been sort of body slammed into a headline about the feds coming to get them.
Well, and there's also kind of an interesting thing in Springfield. I mean, as you know, the Central District is based there, the Northern District up here, and there's almost as if there's a bit of a turf battle going on because, you know, we're seeing a couple of very active investigative lines going on in Springfield by the U.S. Attorney's Office there that involve state grants. And some of those state grants that have been investigated, I mean, they've resulted in indictments against the folks who are running some nonprofit groups. But, you know, Senator Hendon's name has come up in numerous storylines here.
Former senator.
Former senator, absolutely. But you know, he was involved in helping secure some of these grants that have been under investigation. He's been very silent lately. You know, so I think there's a very active, you know, force underway against, you know, a whole batch of current and former state legislators.
Okay, we have one more question. John Holden from DePaul. I think we answered your question. Oh, no, we didn't answer your question. John Holden, where are you, John? Okay, good. Will gay marriage issues impact the election at all? I would assume more on the state level?
Senate races mainly, because it's bubbling up in a lot of...
Okay, in the nationally, in the U.S. Senate races?
I think gay marriage matters. And the degree to which, again, it's a question of, it's sort of like contraception, abortion, immigration, gay marriage. Do any of those, are there single issue voters out there that trumps some of the other things that matter. I don't fully know the answer to that question, knowing the answer to the question at all, but does it matter in terms of people picking a candidate? It does. Does it matter in Illinois? It does.
I'll just piggyback on that there is, their name escapes me at the moment, but there is a super PAC that formed just to support Republican candidates who supported gay marriage. And Judy Biggert, I think, was one of the beneficiaries of infusion of cash from them. So it's an interesting issue that's going on. So, not only just with voters, but with these groups coming out and funding advertising in some really close races.
And as a side note to that, I mean, I think, in Springfield in January, that will be an interesting time to watch to see if Representative Harris tries to move the gay marriage bill out of the House. I mean, I know that he's actively working that roll call right now.
I could say something, but I can't. I'm in enough trouble as it is. Well, what the hell? That PAC must be really big PAC of Republicans supporting gay marriage. That's probably in the four figures.
$500,000 to Judy Biggert.
Okay.
Nothing to
I stand
sneeze at.
corrected. $500,000. Okay. Last question from Don Priest. Dave, you're the guest, so we stick it to you. With the Dems in charge of state government, and as you said, I'm editorializing, Don, don't worry about it. And chances are they're going to hold both chambers. So we start 2013 the same way we ended 2012. Don's question is, what are the chances of counting on some kind of fiscal efficiency? What a way to end this. You always end on a high note.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, the Democrats who run Springfield, their hands are tied by the cliff that we are on here. I mean, all of you know that the temporary income tax increase runs out in 2014, and I think that is increasingly on the minds of a lot of people in Springfield. What are we going to do about that question? And because a lot of the spending has been built around the fact that this money is there, and have that the billions of dollars taken away. I think and we're in a climate there where there have been these just awful cuts to Medicaid, for example, where lots of I think I keep coming back to the ventilator babies with Medicaid. That group of I think $15 million or something was cut from the line that got a little bit of attention, but these babies that have profound disabilities, they survive at home on ventilators. I mean, the state had to cut there. I mean, the cutting has been all over the place. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see, whether we have Democrats running things or whether we have Republicans running things, because that is a reality of life right now.
But you don't think that income tax increase is really going to be temporary, do you?
You know what, I think the real question is when do we see it surface? Because I don't think in 2014, when you have presumably Governor Quinn having to defend himself, I don't think he probably wants to be hounded on the campaign trail with that question. Will you support this? Do you want it extended? I mean, I would not be surprised to see an early push for that.
Early push for that. Rahm Emanuel hopes that those people who survived election come into the session before the new team is sworn in. But I think a lot of pressure is on the people who return to Springfield for this lame duck session to do what people think needs to be done, because they won't have to pay for it in terms of being elected.
And don't forget pensions. I mean, that's a huge issue that I think will be in January that affects the whole financial capabilities of the state.
Will soon be over 20% of the operating budget for the state.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Of course, those of you who are City Club members who were here in July 30th when Governor Quinn announced that it was all going to be over on August 17th, we know that. That was a great prophecy. Okay, how about a big round of applause for our panelists?